Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's I, the Reluctant Gringo, back again with another live stream, another live video. And as you can see, I'm flying solo, so it's just me this day. I am without my partner in crime, my usual partner in crime, my son. So I've been left home alone, basically. Well, it's me and Caesar, my dog. So if you hear him just sort of pounding around in the background, that's him. But yeah, it's been an interesting day. I figured, you know what? Yeah, I'm alone. I'm still going to live stream. Why? Because they say I do this at 6:30, so I do it at 6:30. So hopefully the boys out there having fun like a young man should be. So wherever the two of them are, hey, hope you guys are having a blast. It's been a fun day in the news. There's been one big thing that really caught my eye today. We're going to talk about it. Really, the majority of this live stream is going to be dedicated to what you see on the screen, which is the 14th Amendment, all right? So a while back, Donald Trump signed an executive order to end birthright citizenship. Of course, that got challenged in many different ways. So what is birthright citizenship? Birthright citizenship is basically the idea that if you're born in this country, you're a U.S. citizen. Okay. And people say, well, that says that in the Constitution. Well, it does, but it says other things too. And so what Donald Trump is trying to get rid of is basically people just kind of coming over the border, being pregnant, having babies here, saying, well, now they're citizens, now we're citizens. There's actually been articles you can read. There's in different sanctuary cities like hotels that are set up by organizations for basically pregnant women to come from other countries, come here, give birth. Hey, you're a U.S. citizen now. So now, whether you stand on one side of this or not, it's really not the point of this stream. Personally, I think it's something that's been abused and probably needs to be looked at. But then again, I'm a constitutionalist, and I like to follow what the Constitution says, whether I like it or not. And if I don't like it, then it needs to be changed. And if it can't be changed, then I just have to basically say, well, I don't like it, but I got to get used to it, and I got to learn to love it because it's the Constitution, and smarter men than I wrote the thing. But we're going to dig into it because the Constitution says a lot of other things. People just they just think to themselves, the 14th Amendment says birthright citizenship. Well, it doesn't. Well, Donald Trump's executive order, he wants to end that practice of birthright citizenship in basically certain cases, especially when the parents are not U.S. citizens in particular. Well, like I said, it got challenged, and today he has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to take the matter under advisement and make a ruling. What this does is this forces the U.S. Supreme Court, if they decide to take it. Now, it takes four of the 9 justices to say, yes, we want to hear this case. I'm sure he's got already 3 in Alito and Kavanaugh and Justice Thomas. I think if he takes, if Amy Coney Barrett says yes, that's fine. Chief Justice Roberts says yes, that's fine. So he only really needs one more justice to say, yeah, I want to hear this case, because I'm sure those other 3 conservatives want to hear it. I'm sure they have their own sayings on the matter and their own opinions, as they should, their Supreme Court justices. Now, if they decide to hear this case, will it be heard right away as sort of an emergency sort of hearing? Don't know that yet. Will it be heard later in the fall when the docket is currently being built? Again, don't know. I don't know if we're going to want to wait. I don't know if the president's going to want to wait the whole summer. He'll probably see if he can get this heard sometime in April, I think. If not by the end of March, I think that's really what he wants. But we're going to go through this, okay? So, let me bring up the other screen here so we get the article here. Here we go. Trump asked the Supreme Court to allow him to end birthright citizenship. All right. Now, that's a scary headline. And if you're just reading the headline, now CNN sort of, they're telling the truth, but they're not telling the truth. He's not like, if you're a U.S. citizen and you have a kid, they're a citizen. Okay. This is the way that works. Okay. That's not what he's trying to end. So they call it a fringe theory. It's not a fringe theory. Federal judge in January described this executive order that he said to end birthright citizenship blatantly unconstitutional. Well, this federal judge might be wrong. and blocked its implementation. Days later, a judge in Maryland said that Trump's plan runs counter to our nation's 250-year history of citizenship by birth. Okay, well, it's not 250 years. Okay, first off, birthright citizenship wasn't a thing until the late 1890s, and we're going to talk about that. All right, so we're going to talk about where this idea of birthright citizenship came from, because it came from another Supreme Court ruling, actually based off of two other Supreme Court rulings. One of them, every child in grade school has heard about this Supreme Court case of Dred Scott. So that actually comes into play. Yes, slavery comes into play into this in a big, big way. All right. So appeals courts have brushed aside the Trump administration's request to pause lower court rulings that impose nationwide injunctions on an executive order he signed on the first day of his second term. For more than 150 years, the courts have understood the 14th Amendment to guarantee citizenship to anyone born or naturalized in the United States, regardless of the immigration status of their parents. Okay, we're going to get into that case, what case actually proves that. It's called the Wong Ark case, a Chinese immigrant from 1897. That was actually ruled in 1898. So as you can see, actually right here, landmark Supreme Court case, 1898. Okay, but some conservatives have argued that those long-held views are wrong because the 14th Amendment includes a phrase that benefits that the benefit applies only to people who are, quote, subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Yes, that's true. So we're going to read the 14th Amendment and kind of figure that out. And everybody's going to have their own opinion. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm going to tell you what I think. But you may think totally different. You may have a totally different reading of this. And that's okay. That's cool. All right. So this is going to end up in the Supreme Court. So the first things first. All right. So we're talking about birthright citizenship. We have to start with the 14th Amendment, then go a little backwards, and then go a little forwards to end up where we are today. All right? So it's going to be a lot of legal, but I'm going to try and break it down as best I can. I've read these court cases top to bottom. I'm no legal expert. I'm not a lawyer. I do have a master's in political science, so I do understand some of the terminology in there and kind of understand some of the public policy. So I'll do my best to fill in the gaps where I can. But again, I also encourage everybody to do their own research on this when it comes to the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. If you don't know what that is, man, everybody should know what the Constitution is. Well, here's the 14th Amendment. So a little history before we read it. The 14th Amendment was primarily written by a congressman from Ohio named John Bingham. All right? Great congressman. He wrote this, and he did it for specific reasons. It's always interesting when someone writes something like this. You always want to know what their reasoning is. Same thing. The Constitution was written. You read Madison's Federalist Papers, so you get an idea of why he wrote what he wrote, why he wrote the Constitution the way he did, why he wanted it the way he wanted it, and why he tried to influence his fellow delegates to pass those. So it's like, why do we have the Second Amendment? Well, you can read it in the Federalist Papers, the reason we got it. Why do we have free speech, freedom of religion? Why do we have all these things, right? The first 10 Bill of Rights. It's all there, right? So you can see what people were thinking and what the intent of the law, the intent of the Constitution, the intent of the amendments are. So John Bingham wrote this, right? And then we're going to get into his intent. And it's really Section 1 that we're really concerned about, right? Sections 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's not what's concerned. This whole birthright citizenship is right in here in Section 1 of the 14th Amendment. And of course, the 14th Amendment, one of the most important amendments to come in post-Civil War U.S., right? Free the slaves, give them their rights, make them citizens. All persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction. Let me read that again because that's important. All persons born or naturalized in the United States, comma, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That's the key phrase. You must remember that is the key phrase. Those are the 6 words that are going to be argued in the Supreme Court in the upcoming months. So, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens in the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of the laws. Okay, so let's break that down here, these first 2 sentences. And really, the Supreme Court case that we're talking about, it really only is going to be, this is it. It's going to deal with this first sentence. That's it. That's what we're talking about. That's what this is all hinging on. All right. So all persons born or naturalized in the United States. Cool. Well, what we're talking about is my parents were citizens. Therefore, when I was born in Massachusetts, I became a citizen of the United States and a citizen of Massachusetts. Okay? However, let's say my parents were the French ambassadors to the United States. They were French citizens representing the French government. They were living here because they were the French ambassadors, and my mother was pregnant and she had me. Does that make me a U.S. citizen? No, it does not. Aha, because I am not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. I'm subject to the jurisdiction of France. I'm a French citizen. Get it? Got it? See how that kind of works? Okay. Now we're going to get, that's the easy one. That's question one. That's a warm-up. That's easy. So what we're talking about are illegal immigrants that are coming over the border illegally. Once they step over that border, are they subject now to the jurisdiction of the United States, or are they still subject to the jurisdiction of the country in which they came from because that's who they are citizens of? Get it? Okay. So now, if someone comes over the border illegally, they're a woman, they're pregnant, they have a child, that child is born in, say, the state of Texas. Are they a citizen of the state of Texas? Are they a citizen of the state of the United States? Well, if you read this first part right here, you would say, yes, they were born in the United States, therefore they are a citizen. They are a citizen of the United States and the state therein where they reside. Aha, okay. But is that child subject to the jurisdiction thereof? Or are they like any other minor, they have to follow where their parents are, and therefore, like if there was a French ambassador or whatnot, say the woman was from, I don't know, let's just say Guatemala. She's a citizen of Guatemala, she's had the child, all right, in Texas. Is that child now under the jurisdiction of Guatemala? Because her mother is a citizen of Guatemala, not a citizen of the United States. Then you have, right? Now, some could argue it's equal protection. You're in the United States, therefore the Constitution covers you. Okay, that can be argued back and forth, but that's not what we're arguing here. We're arguing the 14th Amendment, and that's what Trump is arguing, birthright citizenship. So, how did we go from here, right? And then how did we get to birthright citizenship? Where did that come from? Where did that term come from? Well, first off, let's talk about the First Amendment before we go to that case. We got to go backwards. We've got to go to Dred Scott. Why did John Bingham of Ohio, the congressman from Ohio, who wrote this 14th Amendment, why did he write it the way he wrote it? Aha. We know because he wrote in his own personal papers and in his own speeches on the floor of the House of Representatives at the time, the reason behind Section 1 of the 14th Amendment is the Dred Scott case. Now, we've all heard, if your school was any good, your public school was any good when you were in grade school, you have heard of the Dred Scott case. It is, and simply put, in this ruling, this is one of the most disgusting rulings the Supreme Court ever made. This is one of those Supreme Court cases where you look at it and go, what the hell was wrong with us back then? Okay, so in this ruling, the U.S. Supreme Court stated that enslaved people, slaves, were not citizens of the United States and therefore could not expect any protection from the federal government or the courts. The opinion also stated that Congress had no authority to ban slavery from a federal territory. All right? In 1846, an enslaved black man named Dred Scott and his wife Harriet sued for their freedom in St. Louis Circuit Court. They claimed that they were free due to their residence in a free territory where slavery was prohibited. He was a runaway slave. He escaped. He and his wife escaped. They ran away. Good for them. Friggin' get the hell out of there. They got to St. Louis, and St. Louis is supposed to be a free state. So they figured, well, they got there. Now they're free. It didn't work that way. The Supreme Court basically ruled that, no, they've got to go back because these aren't people. Basically, what the Supreme Court was saying is that Dred Scott and his wife Harriet, slaves in general, were not real people. They're property. Therefore, they cannot have these kinds of protections and were sent back. That is why, after the Civil War, let's go back to it. Here we go, U.S. Constitution. John Bingham was so adamant about this damn Section 1. We're so like, okay, well, we're so crazy about right now with birthright citizenship. John Bingham, in his wisdom, was like, hey, we've got to protect the rights of the freed slaves, because he remembered, he was old enough to remember the Dred Scott case and go, that's a bunch of bullshit, and say these people are born or they're naturalized here in the United States because they're here against their will or whatever, right? Whatever the reason is, they were either born slaves in the United States or they were naturalized because they were brought here against their will, right? They need to be protected. They need to be given their rights. We need to guarantee them that when we say we're freed all the slaves, it's not just a toothless saying. It actually has something behind it. Hence, the 14th Amendment was designed to make sure people like Dred Scott were never taken advantage of again or never had their rights taken away from again. The intent of the 14th Amendment was not, and again, I'm just going on the intent. You can have your own opinion on this. I really encourage everybody to form their own opinion on this because it's really important. The intent of John Bingham's 14th Amendment was not illegal immigrants coming over and then bam, you're automatically a citizen. That was not the intent. But, how did we get birthright citizenship from that, you say, gringo? I'm going to tell you. Because even though Dred Scott was decided in 1857 and the Civil War was well past ended and the 14th Amendment was already passed, we still had a problem. We had this guy, Wong Kim Ark. Okay? Wong Kim Ark is a Chinese, was a young Chinese man. All right. This case was heard in 1897 and decided in 1898. Okay. Back in the time, just to give you a little background, back in the late 1890s, there was a huge anti-Chinese immigration wave going through the United States. We just couldn't stand the Chinese. We couldn't stand the Chinese immigrants. It was like just the Chinese Red Scare all over. It was just, we just wanted them out. We had such a bias against Chinese immigration at the time, both in terms of they're taking over labor, they're all that stuff. You know, the same old bullshit that we hear all the time. So, Wong Kim Ark was born in the United States. His parents were Chinese immigrants. Now, the immigration system in the mid 1800s, in the 1870s, was way different than what we have now. So I get it. You have to just keep in mind, this is apples and oranges right now, okay? So Wong Kim Ark's parents came over legally, right? There was no such thing as we have now, all the processes and whatnot. They came over legally. They built a home. They paid their taxes. They started a business. They were here for about 21 years, okay? They made money. They were part of their community. They were never a problem. They never got arrested, right? No problem, right? Live your life, be happy. They had a child, Wong Kim Ark, young man. So after about 20 years, Wong's parents decided, well, we want to retire. We've worked hard. We've built a business. We're going to pass it off to our son. He's got, right? We want to retire, but we want to retire back in the homeland of China. So far, there's not a problem, right? Okay. Well, Wong's like, well, that's great. I'll go over there with you for a couple of weeks. I get to see China, make sure you're all set and settled in, and I'll come back to San Francisco. Again, so far, no problem. Well, Wong does that. His parents are settled. Wong comes back in San Francisco when he's getting off the boat. Immigration stops him and says, you can't enter. Because there's so many anti-Chinese laws and immigration laws, and they wouldn't believe that, no, I'm really a U.S. citizen. They're looking at me, no, you're a Chinese guy. You're not a U.S. citizen, right? It's just the way things were back then. Deal with it. This is what happened, okay? Well, Wong and this whole case ended up in the Supreme Court, okay? And what they said is they decided that, no, Wong is a U.S. citizen. This is where birthright citizenship came from. Even though his parents were immigrants, now granted, they were legal immigrants. Again, here's another key phrase. The courts are all about this, and that, right? They were legal immigrants, all right? A child born in the United States of parents of Chinese descent who at the time of his birth are subjects of the Emperor of China, right? So they were legal immigrants, but they were not citizens of the United States. They were subjects of the Emperor of China because they were still considered citizens of China. But they had here's another key, but they had a permanent domicile. They had a permanent residence in the United States, and they were there carrying on their own business and were not employed in any diplomatic or official capacity under the Emperor of China. Well, that means that Wong is, because they had a domicile, they were business, taxes, they were doing all that, right? They were following the process and the rules and the law and all that. Okay, makes sense. Wong's a U.S. citizen. They said, yes, you can stay, of course. Right? And so that was decided in 1899. Now, this is the case, along with the 14th Amendment, people point to and go, birthright citizenship. It's universal. Well, no, it's not universal, okay? Again, it's not universal. If someone's telling you it's universal, no. There was the Supreme Court was not dumb. They would not have put in specific criteria into their decisions if they didn't think somebody was going to try and make it a universal thing, right? They have a permanent domicile. They have a permanent residence in the United States, right? If you're someone who just came over and is hiding in one of these hotels so you can give birth, so you can have a child that's a U.S. citizen and chain link immigration, that doesn't fit this case, right? This case obviously does not apply to you, but here's what the other side is going to be pointing at. But again, there's lots of wiggle room, okay? Now you can read this whole syllabus. The justices, the facts of this case as agreed by the parties as follows. Wong Kim Ark was born in 1873 in the city of San Francisco in the state of California in the United States of America, was and is a laborer. His father and mother were persons of Chinese descent and subjects of the Emperor of China. They were at the time of his birth domiciled residents in the United States. They had a residence, right? Having previously established and still enjoying a permanent domicile and residence there in San Francisco, they continued to reside and remain in the United States until 1890 when they departed for China. And during all the time of their residence in the United States, they were engaged in business and were never employed in any diplomatic right. They weren't working for a foreign government. Wong Kim Ark, ever since his birth, has had but one residence, to wit, in California within the United States, and has there resided, claiming to be a citizen of the United States, and has never lost or changed that residence or gained or acquired another residence, and neither he nor his parents acting for him ever renounced his allegiance to the United States or did or committed any act to or thing to exclude him. Okay, again, a lot of legal stuff going on there. They never broke the law. They never renounced their allegiance to the United States. Okay, does someone sneaking over the border illegally, do they have allegiance to the United States? Have they said some sort of oath in court on a Bible or whatever religious text you want to say it on, right? So again, you get into the nitty gritty and you see where Trump has a little wiggle room, right? He's got lawyers. They're pretty creative. And as you can see, as you start to peel back this onion, you start to see there's spaces that, you could fill in those gaps by saying, yeah, these, birthright citizenship isn't universal. So this is the background of what Trump is trying to do. He's trying to fill in those gaps and say they don't meet these kind of criteria, which they don't. I mean, let's face it, okay? They don't. Someone who illegally enters the country, all right, and is a citizen of another country, they've not taken an oath, they've not gone through the citizenship process, and I know what the citizenship process is because I've gone through it myself with my wife. Right, you got to take an oath of allegiance, even with the permanent residency. You got to do certain things, sign certain documents. So this case where people will point to and say, birthright citizenship, it's not a slam dunk. That's why I think the Supreme Court's going to hear it, and that's why I think there's a 50-50 shot. I think 50-50 shot that Trump is successful. And I don't mean like yes, no. I know 50-50 sounds like yes or no, half. Normally, if it was a more balanced court, I'd say there's no chance. No chance. I absolutely see Justice Alito, Justice Thomas, and Justice Kavanaugh making the same arguments or siding with the same arguments I just made. All right? Looking at the intent of the 14th Amendment, looking at where the 14th Amendment came from with the Dred Scott case, looking at its history when it involves slavery and freed slaves, and then looking at how this case, United States versus Wong Kim Ark from 1898, impacted it, and seeing all the wiggle room that's there, right? So you got three there. Will Amy Coney Barrett overturn? Will she side? She's a wild card in this one, I guarantee you. And will Chief Justice Roberts side with the conservative side? This is an uphill battle. That's why I think he's got three justices that'll side with him. I think it's a 60-70% chance Amy Coney Barrett signs on. I think it's 30% chance Roberts signs on, and then he loses, right? Because there's no way the other three justices who are very liberal and progressive and see things the exact opposite of how I just argued them on Trump's behalf, And again, it's a fair way to look at it too, because it's been precedent. They call it super precedent, right? Super precedent. It's just been the precedent all along, and we'll see. And it's really hard to break the precedents that have been around for 100, 150 years. Those are hard to sort of go against. Supreme Courts don't usually want to go against those large precedents. I mean, but again, we'll see. It'll be interesting to listen to. It'll be interesting to hear. But again, it goes back to, again, for everybody where it starts, it goes back to this key phrase: subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, you could argue that since the Constitution covers everybody who comes into the country, then everybody's the jurisdiction thereof of the United States. Again, nothing is concrete. You would like to think that something like the 14th Amendment was more concrete. It's not. It just isn't. Why? Because it was written in response to a specific issue. And when things are written in response to a specific issue, they have trouble covering other issues that are outside its purview, that it was never intended to cover. Okay? You can argue, so this is what Trump is wanting to do. So again, 14th Amendment, everybody should know what that is. Dred Scott case, you got to look that up and know what that's all about. So if you really want to know where all this stuff is going to come from, and then this case right here, United States versus Wong Kim Ark from 1898. Not hard to find. Just type it in and you'll be able to get that. You can read everything. You can see the arguments. Usually the arguments are given. You can see all the things that were, all the other cases that were sort of cited as that precedent to come. But this is the case that people look for. All right. As for birthright citizenship. That's really where, and it's a huge deal. I mean, we're talking our Constitution. We're talking the interpretation of our Constitution, something that could affect millions. Talk about dreamers. Let's just talk about dreamers. All right? You're a 4-year-old kid. You don't know shit from Shinola. You don't know what the hell's going on, but your mother and father, who enter the country illegally, bring you with them. Okay. Again, this case could decide, do dreamers really have rights? It's the only country they've known since they're 4 years old. It's the only country they really know because really, who remembers anything before they were 4? They consider themselves Americans. Some of them serve. But you can argue that, well, because their parents brought them over, they're subjects of the country that their parents left. And because they came over illegally, they never renounced their citizenship or their allegiance to their former country and never swore allegiance to the country that they're in now. So dreamers should be watching this case very, very closely. It's easy to be heartless when it comes to dreamers, but it's one thing if you knowingly enter the country illegally. I kind of have less sympathy, right? You broke the laws. There's ways to do this legally. It's another thing when you're a child, you don't know what the hell's going on. You're just being dragged all over the Western Hemisphere from south to north, and you're like, okay, I'm an American. It's like it's easier to have a lot more empathy and sympathy and compassion for people who are dreamers. Now, if you're 15, 16, 17 years old and you're like, I was a dreamer because they brought me over when I was 15, 16, 17. All right, I start to lose a little bit of the compassion. Still there, but I start to lose a little bit. But it's for those people who's like, I don't remember it being anything but an American. I don't remember being in any country but America. I don't remember doing anything but being in an American school with American friends and speaking English. So there's that. So dreamers should be watching this court case when it goes up. If it gets to, all of this could be moot. And the U.S. Supreme Court could just say, listen, we don't want to hear the case, and you need to follow what the federal judge already told you, that you can't end birthright citizenship, so stop trying. That could happen. This thing might not even make the Supreme Court, but I think it will. I think it makes the Supreme Court. Again, he needs one more justice to say yes, because definitely those other 3 are going to say yes to hearing it. But again, it could not, if it doesn't make it, everything we talked about, it just doesn't matter, right? It would be nice to have some sort of definition. It would be nice to have some sort of clarification. It would be nice to have some sort of, guidance from the highest court of the land as to what we should do with, Again, Dred Scott, 1857. We're talking about 125, 130, 135 years of U.S. Supreme Court cases that need to be just codified and cobbled together and just say, here's the answer. Okay, stop bothering us. Okay, do your job, stop bothering us. So we're talking, this has been an issue since 1857. I think it's about time we decided it. I think it's one way or the other. I think it's about time we just said, this is what it is. Like the answer, don't like the answer, but at least we get an answer. I think that's what we need to do at this point in time. So, but that is the big story. That is, I shouldn't say it's the big story. It's the biggest story today that caught my eye because I think it has such far-reaching implications, not only for immigration, but for just people in this country who have been here for other reasons than immigration or illegal immigrants. They're just here because they got dragged here. So it's just really, I think, for me, interesting to see how that goes. But again, I will always stand by Dred Scott. I don't know what the hell we were thinking back then. It's one of those times you look at the United States and go, God, we sucked back then. It's like, no, slaves are not people, they're property. Oh, dear God. It's like, really? 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 Chief Justice Roger B. Taney, you read the majority opinion for the court. Roger B. Taney, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in 1857, thought people were property. Kind of makes you think who kind of people we were choosing for the Supreme Court back then. Oh, man. So, but yes. Oh, what else we got going on? Oh, we got some fun stuff. Okay. Speaking of immigration. All right, I had to bring this up. I got to bring this up. This happened today. Some people are asking, especially a representative from San Diego, for Governor Newsom to resign. Nothing new. Well, it turns out old Governor Newsom, when he and some of the boys in California, the legislature, they need $3.4 billion, $3.5 billion more dollars. So they're going to take out a loan, which the California taxpayers are going to have to pay back with interest, because they added into their medical providers interim payment, into their Medicaid and all that, into basically the state-run medical insurance program. They added in all the illegal immigrants. And so they're now, their Medi-Cal expenditures for 2024 to 2025 are now, just for 1 year, going to be down $3.5 billion or $3.45 billion. So the residents of California are going to have to get a loan to make up for the gap in Medi-Cal spending, which critics say is, and even Governor Newsom came out and said, yes, it's what it is. It's illegal immigration. It was revealed a few weeks ago that the state had $6 billion in expected costs for Medi-Cal, but is now roughly $9.5 billion. So they were already spending $6 billion on medical costs, in state-run medical costs for the state of California because of the illegal immigrants. That's now 9.5. Basically, just call it 10 billion. This comes after it became state law to allow people to qualify for other programs regardless of their immigration status. Medi-Cal is the state's Medicaid system and for certain Golden State residents, which takes both federal and state taxpayer dollars. Oh, good. So not only is the state, the people in the state of California paying for it, but the people all over the country are paying for it. So if you live in Kansas, you're paying for illegal immigrant health care in California. So is everybody else. Taxpayer dollars, according to the state government website. Critics of allowing the program's availability to those who are in country illegally strongly believe it is cause for concern. Well, it was cause for concern for this guy. This is Carl DeMaio. He's a Republican representative from San Diego for the state legislature in California. He's an assembly member. He basically spoke out against this whole thing. He was a member. He was a member of the budget committee that would actually, keep an eye on this stuff, and he actually helped reveal that this was going on. So what did they do for his good hard work? Well, the Democrats in California kicked him off the budget committee. How dare you tell the truth? How dare you reveal the truth about California's budget problems when it comes to illegal immigration and Medicare costs? How dare you? Get off the budget committee. We don't want you here. We don't want people with transparency. Get the hell out. So Governor Newsom is now facing, again, calls to resign. Again, this guy's running for president. Okay, we talked about it, right? When Trump's term is over, it's going to be this guy versus J.D. Vance. I'm telling you right now, if everything works out the way it's going to be, if things go well these upcoming 3 or 4 years, it's going to be Governor Newsom versus J.D. Vance. And really, we have to remember this shit when Governor Newsom is running and be like, didn't you give free health care to all the illegal immigrants and it ballooned your Medicare costs in the state of California from $6 billion to $10 billion? I mean, again, this stuff drives me nuts. It drives me nuts not because I don't want to see people not get medical care, but it's how we prioritize things. Like, we have homeless vets that need medical care. We have vets in homes that need medical care. We have infants. We have handicapped. We have mentally ill that need medical care that are not getting prioritized the way illegal immigrants are getting prioritized. And that's just reality. And it's not that I want people to get in line. It's just I want to take care of the people who are here, people who serve, people, not criminals that broke the law and came over illegally. I'm sorry. That's just the way I feel. Some of you may feel differently and see it more of a universal thing. I get that. I see that. But the guy who strapped on a machine gun and some camouflage and went over and got his legs blown off because he thought he was serving the country, I want to take care of that guy first. I want to take care of the kid who was born with Down syndrome and really has no options, right? I want to take care of that kid. I want to take care of those people who are, born with an illness, born handicapped, born with some sort of disability that really need a helping hand. I want those people. I want to make sure, but they're not, and they're not. You're just not. You get blind, you get deaf, it's just, there's so much out there. And I think, you have to prioritize. So the illegal immigrants got to go back to the back of the line, I guess. I guess that's really, in the end, I guess kind of come full circle with the whole argument. But it's ridiculous. So if California, but again, do you want this guy as your president? You want Gavin Newsom as your president? I mean, he just flip-flopped to sort of soften his image. He came out and said transgender men shouldn't be in women's sports, when all along he's been supporting it and supporting it and supporting it and supporting it and supporting it, signing bills for it, making it legal, making it protected in the state of California. Now he sees the winds of political change and he's like, oh, damn, I want to be president. So I better come out and say this. I mean, the guy started his own podcast, for crying out loud. Really. I mean, no one says anything when the governor of California, liberal, starts his own podcast. I want Trump to start his own podcast. I mean, he doesn't need to. Trump talks to anybody, anywhere. Any reporter asks him a question, he'll answer it. Guy answers. That's all the guy does is talk to reporters. So he really doesn't need his own podcast. But if Trump started his own podcast, people would be losing their friggin' minds, right? They'd be like, they'd lose it. Governor Newsom wants to soften his image, become more moderate, which he's not, right? He's about, if Kamala Harris is here, all right, and I'm going to go opposite of the screen, but this is Gavin Newsom, just a little left Kamala Harris, all right? So, but again, he's going to be the nominee. There's no one else to be the nominee. There's just no one else. No one else. No one else is going to take the nomination. I don't see it. Not going to be Waltz. It's not going to be Harris again. It's not going to be Hillary, even though some people think Hillary. It's not going to be Michelle Obama. I don't think she wants anything to do with this. She's been in politics. She was in the White House. I think she's making millions doing things for Netflix. I think she's just glad to be behind the scenes doing whatever she's doing. I don't think she's running either. So just remember all this stuff that comes up about Gavin Newsom. But my favorite part of the story is still this poor bastard who's like, let me tell the truth about where the money's going. And they tell him, well, you can't be on the budget committee anymore. And they kick him off. California politics. I guess that's how it works. You should have lied, man. What are you doing? You're a politician. You're supposed to lie. You're in California. It's okay. It's expected. It's what you tell the truth in California. I guess they freak out. They're like, we don't know what to do with this guy. This guy, he's dangerous. He's telling the truth. So, that's my favorite part of that. But, oh boy. All right. This is gonna be a tough needle to thread. I'm telling you right now. Putin says he has reservations about 30-day ceasefire proposal as U.S. envoy arrives in Moscow. There's Steve Witkoff. I call him Trump's bulldog. This is not the happy, fun-go-lucky Trump ambassador advisor you want showing up on your doorstep, as I always say. All right, this is not the guy that's going to be like, hey, let's play some pinochle and have a couple of drinks. This is the guy that's like, We need to get this done now. This is the guy that puts the horse's head in the bed, right? This is what he does. So, anyways, Vladimir Putin, most trustworthy guy in all of Russia, in a Thursday news conference, he has reservations about a potential 30-day ceasefire. Now, Ukraine has already said we're cool with the 30-day ceasefire. Let's do it. Let's do the 30. So the United States is like, cool. Let's go get Russia to say yes to this. They're saying it's not clear how the situation would develop in Kursk and elsewhere if ceasefire was implemented. I can tell you how the situation would develop. People would stop dying. People would stop shooting at each other. It's a great, great first step to seeing where the situation will go. Now, while Putin lauded the U.S. proposal as great and correct and said Russia supports it in theory, I support a lot of things in theory. It doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean that I'm going to actually go through with it. But okay, as Russia supports it in theory, there are many things that still need. Why is my Siri turning on? Shut up, Siri. There are many things that still need to be discussed. The comments come as American Special Envoy Steve Witkoff arrived in Moscow. That ought to be a fun meeting. Now, the United States and Ukraine held talks in Saudi Arabia earlier this week in which Kiev accepted proposals for a 30-day U.S.-backed ceasefire covering the entire front line. Right? And now Putin's like, well, what are we going to do? How's this going to work? I don't know. Putin, you just tell your guys, stop fucking firing weapons and stand down. That's just, like, literally, I don't know why this is like, why is this hard? Right? But here's where he gets into his bullshit. Here's where Putin gets into his bullshit. We agree with the proposal to cease hostilities, but we have to bear in mind that this ceasefire must be aimed at a long-lasting peace, and it must look at the root causes of the crisis. Okay, here are the root causes of the crisis. First off, Putin doesn't want Ukraine to have the ability to join NATO. Again, I don't think any country should be able to tell any other country what they can do with what they can join. They lost the Cold War. Putin lost the Cold War. Russia lost the Cold War. Sorry. It's one of the things you're going to have to deal with. So if Ukraine wants to join NATO, which I don't think they should be able to join NATO, I think NATO just needs to go away at this point. All right, NATO's more trouble than it's worth at this point. But again, they don't want them to join NATO because they don't want a NATO country on their border. They also don't want the current government to remain in power. Putin wants his own government. Putin wants people that are friendly to Russia. Putin wants lapdogs. Putin wants satellite states. Putin wants the old Soviet Union. Again, I don't think you should be allowed to invade a country, and then part of the ceasefire agreement is to dictate their internal politics. And these are two non-starting points. So this poor bastard is literally going to have to put a horse's head in Putin's bed. You know, give him an offer he can't refuse. It's going to be, do what we need you to do, or Trump's going to put so many freaking banking sanctions on you, you're going to lose every coin you have. It's just going to suck. All right, I think that's really going to have. Putin went on to raise many questions about potential ceasefire, including how it would be verified. Well, I can tell you how it would be verified. There'll be no more dead people. All right? If there's a dead guy somewhere on either side, we know ceasefire has been broken, okay? So it's really easy. So these stupid questions. I mean, no offense. Putin's just playing bullshit politics right now. He's just playing dumb. All right? Who would give the orders to cease hostilities? Who would give the orders? I would assume Zelensky would tell the Ukrainian army to stop firing weapons. And you, Vladimir, because you're the guy in charge, would tell the Russian army to stop firing weapons. That's usually how it works, chain of command. Again, the stupidity of these questions, I know. I think he's just stalling. What will happen in Russia's Kursk region? Don't know. Where Ukraine is still occupying some territory. Well, maybe Ukraine will give back the region of Kursk if you give back the 20% of Ukraine that you're occupying. Seems like a fair trade, right? I mean, I don't know. Granted, I'm not there. I'm not in the meeting room. I think I'm pretty good at this whole let's figure out the ceasefire thing. I've already figured half of it out, right? You want your Kursk back? You want your Ukraine back? Okay, swap. Tradesies, all right? Just do it. But you don't want to do it because you don't really want peace. If we stop military action for 30 days, does that mean that everyone who is still there will leave without a fight? That's normally what a ceasefire means, but okay. So I'm making this more simple than what it is. I get it. I understand that. I'm kind of mocking a little bit because I think Putin's acting like a jackass. But at this point, I think anything that's just going to stop people from shooting each other and killing each other is just a good thing. And we just got to get it over with. We just got to get something implemented. Trump to meet NATO chief at the White House as U.S. works to secure. Trump's just going to be like, get the shit done. It's just, there's no more, I don't think he's really, there's no meeting. It's just Trump looking at the guy going, get the shit done. Just go do your freaking job. Okay. That's really what that meeting is. It's basically the NATO chief standing there while Trump friggin' gives him an earful. So, but yeah, this article goes on, but really, really the ball is in Russian President Vladimir. This really says it all. U.S. President said the ball is in Russia's court. He goes, we're going to have to see. It's up to Russia now. Trump told reporters in the Oval Office as he declined to comment on whether he has a meeting scheduled with the Russian leader. I'm sure he's got a meeting at some point in time scheduled somewhere that's not public yet with both Putin, with Xi Jinping. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a stop over in North Korea, see his old pal. But I'm sure there's something. There's some sort of summit as part of this deal. Right? As parts of these deals, which we'll never know until it's all revealed in the end. And I'm sure a summit and negotiations with Russia and the United States over oil, gas, energy. I'm sure that's natural mineral. I'm sure something is included there. So, but yeah, oof, what a day. So it's been interesting. Still got that up. All right. But with that, everybody, I've had fun. It's really strange not having my partner here with me. So hopefully I did all right solo. Usually he keeps me in check. He does my research and he reads comments and he whatever, he does all the work. I just sit here and talk. So I kind of miss him. So if you're out there, buddy, I love you. I can't wait for you to come home. If you want to join us later on tonight, we do video games all the time. We do live stream video games. Tonight we have the early access to MLB The Show 25. We love baseball. We're actually going to start a baseball channel where we just talk about baseball. So we're excited. We loved MLB The Show 24. MLB The Show 25 comes out in a couple hours. We're going to be right on it, and we're going to live stream what we play. So if you want to join us then, and you're a baseball fan, you want to hear baseball talk, hear two guys talk about baseball, please join us. But other than that, that'll be around 10 o'clock our time, so around probably midnight Eastern Standard Time. But other than that, I just want to say goodbye. Thank you to everybody for joining in, and hope you had fun. Hope you learned something as well. I'm still your reluctant gringo from somewhere south of the border. Salute, and a huevo.